Do grievances give people the right to murder? Does injustice, real or imagined, justify murder? The war against Israel has long centered on grievances. Grievances are being used to justify murder, war, and terror against the civilian population of Israel. It keeps the war from ever getting resolved. The focus on countering the grievances or explaining how Israelis have legitimate grievances of their own does not address the fundamental issue underlying all of this. The focus must stop being on the legitimacy of grievances as reasons to murder. Instead, murder must stop being given legitimacy, period, no matter the grievance or claim of injustice. Murder is accepted by many as the legitimate response to grievances when it comes to Israel and practically nowhere else in the world, in a world full of grievances and injustices, including grievances and injustices experienced by Israelis themselves. Some will say the Nakba gives the Arabs, called Palestinians, the permanent right to murder. There have been plenty of Nakbas in this world. Besides the fact that if Arab armies did not attack Israel in 1948 and try to destroy Israel, there would have been no exodus of Arabs from Israel. Far more Jews have their own Nakba and were driven from their lands all over the Middle East and North Africa and forced to flee for their lives to Israel than the number of Arabs that fled from Israel in 1948 during a time of war. These Jews from the Middle East and North Africa and Africa in general formed the majority population of Israel. If grievances are the foundation for murder, then do the Jews have the right to murder people all over the Middle East and North Africa? Jewish tribes were slaughtered and driven out from what is now Saudi Arabia in the 7th century. Do Jews have the same right to rectify past injustice and persecution? No. Jews were driven out and fled from persecution from Iraq, Libya, Syria, Algeria, Iran, Yemen, Egypt, and many more lands across the Middle East and North Africa. Do Jews have the right to kill the people in those countries? No. Jews were massacred all over British-controlled Palestine by Arabs, including the Hebron massacre of 1929. Do Jews have the right to revenge these past evils and take it out on their descendants? No. All the people living on land stolen from native people all over North America, South America, Africa, Asia, Australia, and elsewhere, screaming for the murder of Jews in their one small country because the Jews are wrongly not considered indigenous or because there are grievances made against them, do not apply the same standard to themselves. If native indigenous people started slaughtering non-native people, applying the same standard used by millions against Israel, that grievances and past injustices, real or imagined, justify murder, then it would mean the slaughter of millions upon millions of these hypocrites. Not to murder is the most fundamental commandment for all of humanity to live by. Grievances and injustices do not abrogate the most fundamental rule not to murder. Without the basic standard of thou shalt not murder being applied to all people everywhere, with no exceptions, there will never be an end to war and misery. Hitler showed the world where hate and demonizing leads. He showed what happens when murder is no longer prohibited against certain populations and is instead allowed and promoted. This includes over 70 million people killed, a Holocaust with almost all of Europe's Jews murdered, over 6 million people, millions of survivors permanently wounded and scarred for life, Europe in ruins, and more. October 7th happened because there was and is no prohibition against murder by those that committed these acts on October 7th. The most fundamental rule by which all of humanity must live must be defended. Grievances and injustices, real or imagined, do not override the commandment not to murder. This most basic of rules, this most fundamental principle, continues to be disregarded or rejected.